We all know it can be really scary to stand up and present in front of people that you may or may not know, but it's part of everyday life in science. Therefore, we're going to give you some tips to make it a little bit easier. Firstly, it's really important to engage with your audience by looking at them and speaking directly to them. Facing your presentation like this stops you from projecting your voice to the rest of the room, and it also makes you look really nervous. People often speak really quickly when they're nervous, but it's important that you're speaking slowly and concisely so that your audience can understand what you're saying. Therefore, take some breaths in between sentences to try and calm your nerves. We've now put together some slides so that you can see the differences between do's and don'ts when it comes to presenting. Firstly, on the slide here, you can see there are a lot of colours, a lot of different fonts, and really isn't very consistent. It's often important to try and keep the same theme throughout your presentation. So for instance, using the same colours, the same banner at the bottom, and the same font for your titles. You can also see there's a lot of acronyms used here, which can be difficult if people aren't in your field. It's important that you explain them first. This slide here is a little better than the previous one. It's using the same colours and theme throughout, and instead of the text all appearing at once, it's coming on sentence by sentence. This gives you time to speak to your audience about that point before moving on, and it also gives them time to read it as you're speaking. You can also see I've removed some of the acronyms here, and all the font is of the same size and will be readable at the back of the room. Next. It's often tempting when you have a limit on your number of slides to try and put all of your figures on one. However, this makes it really difficult for people to see the details and things like the axes and the fonts. Rainbow colour plots make it difficult for people with colour blindness to differentiate between the different colours, and this type of colour scheme is trying to be phased out in science. You can also see on the number of the other plots that the same colour is used for each of the data points, but maybe a different shade. This can often be difficult to see at the back of the room. You can also see that on this plot here, there's a linear regression across data that doesn't seem to fit. It can be tempting to include statistics and regressions such as these. However, if it doesn't fit your data, it's not worth doing. On this slide, we've reduced the number of plots and left space so that you can talk about your main findings. That makes it a little bit easier for the audience to take in the information you're giving them. You can also see the axes clearer and the units are labelled. Different colours are also used for the data so that it's easier for people at the back of the room to be able to tell which data set you're talking about. Often it can be better to go into more detail about one of your data findings than trying to put everything on a slide in a short period of time. You may want to conclude your slides with a summary of your key findings, because research has shown that people remember the end of your presentation more than the middle, so you may want to include a summary of the main points you have found. So next time you present, hopefully you can take some of these tips on board to have a more concise, clear and engaging presentation.